All right, this isn't a build guide. This is more of just a showcase of bone offering. I want to talk about bone offering a little bit. I haven't really seen it recommended or used in any build guides. There may be some out there that I haven't seen, but it doesn't seem like a very popular choice, so I just wanted to talk a little bit about it. The main reason I started looking at it is when looking through the minion support gems, there's Dance Macabre and Ablation, and these are very explicitly calling out offering skills. So the offering skills have 30% increased buff effect. So when looking at that, it makes a lot of sense because offerings typically have some effect, like pain offering, increased effect. Intuitively, that would make sense what it would do. The part that was a little more confusing at first was when it says supported offerings deal 30% more damage, because the more popular offerings like pain offering and soul offering, those don't actually deal damage. So this would really only be applicable for bone offering, since it is the only offering skill that actually deals damage itself. So I slapped on a few supports, gave it a shot. It actually does a lot more damage than I was expecting. And I only have it supported with 3 gems, so that same Dance Macabre and Ablation. I've also put on Considered Casting because it doesn't technically have a casting time, so it's just free damage. I guess for those of you unfamiliar with Bone Offering, when you use it, like any other offering, you're impaling one of your persistent skeletal minions, and it will give all of your minions a bone shield, so you'll be able to see the effect of the bone shield on your minions there. And that bone shield, for as long as Bone Offering is around, will absorb the next hit that that minion takes, and then it will explode, dealing a AoE explosion. Now, with these 3 supports, we'll see that my explosion is at about 10,000 damage. This is with, I'm sitting around 172% increased minion damage. I'm also running a Lich, so that's also going to factor in Necromantic Conduit and Blackened Heart, so the Unholy Might, adding a little bit more to it as well. Now, that's a pretty high amount of damage when you consider that it is every single one of your minions that is getting this. Now, I guess to talk about some of the positives, it can be used with any minion build. All of the scaling is off minion scaling damage, scaling life, scaling defenses and resistances. All of the same stuff you would normally get for any other minion build applies to Bone Offering. So it would be a pretty easy thing to slot into really any existing minion build. It synergizes a bit better with melee minions because if you're using all ranged minions, your ranged minions aren't going to be running up to enemies to attack them. So if theirs explodes from a hit, they're not really going to. There's a higher possibility they're not going to be next to anything for that explosion to hit. It'll still mitigate the damage of the hit though, so it's kind of nice for survivability of some of your minions, despite having to kill 1 or 2 of your minions to do it. But so it does synergize better with your melee minions, so things like Reavers and Brutes. Reavers and Brutes, their weaknesses anyway was the fact that they were lacking in AoE options, so their clear wasn't that great, so this really helps make up for that. The other thing about Bone Offering is that it's not just your persistent minions that it applies to. It gives a bone shield to all of your minions. So you'll notice in the footage earlier, I'm running Unearth. So as I'm going through a map, I'm unearthing bone constructs, and then as I'm applying Bone Offering, those bone constructs are also getting bone shields. And you can get, with my current gem level of Unearth, I'm getting maybe about 20, up to 20 bone constructs, which is a lot of extra bodies. So you could imagine that 20 bone constructs with bone shields, if all of them were to explode and hit the same enemy, that's like 200,000 damage. Not that that's going to happen, though. There is kind of an upper limit to the number of explosions you might get per Bone Offering cast, mostly due to Ablation. So Ablation, when it sacrifices 15% of life on use, that is actually subtracting life, not only when you first cast it, but every time a Bone Shield explodes, it's subtracting 15% life from the Bone Offerings themselves. This is both a benefit and a downside. So the downside is you may get less bone explosions per cast of Bone Offering because they'll kill themselves pretty quickly. But the upside is that by them killing themselves pretty quickly, you can then recast it that much sooner. So there's kind of a balance between how long you want it active for, because once your front line explodes all their shields, there's no sense in leaving it up for your back line to also explode their shields, because those are less likely to happen. The other nice thing about Bone Offering is it has a really high stun buildup. So it has 100% more stun buildup, and it's basically all physical damage other than the chaos conversion from Unholy Might. So you may notice that a lot of rare mobs are getting stunned very quickly, or at least primed for stunning, so that your Skeletal Brute, if you're running any, can go in and stun those enemies. Maybe put something like Devastate on them so that they break armor when they stun. So that's a nice synergy as well. Now, there are downsides to the Bone Offering from what I can tell. So one of the downsides that's very obvious is that your minions have to get hit for the Bone Shield to detonate. If Bone Offering expires, they don't detonate, they just go away. So your minions do have to get hit. So it can lead to some kind of inconsistent runs or inconsistent results. Maybe you're fighting a rare enemy who's decided that they want to attack you specifically and completely ignore all of your minions, then you're not getting as many explosions. Same things with bossing. Bossing can feel pretty inconsistent depending on the boss. Some bosses don't really have big AoE attacks that will be hitting your minions and exploding the shields, or particularly the kinds of bosses that are really quick and mobile that will target you specifically and not your minions. So that's kind of the downside. The other thing is the Bone Offerings, or the offering skills in general, are pretty squishy. They don't have the biggest HP pool. So right now I have 142% increased minion maximum life, and they only have about 2100 life. So it is very important that you get things like your resistances capped for minions, which you're probably already going to do anyway for your minions. I've just found that it's especially important when running Bone Offering. Earlier, when I was experimenting with this and didn't have resistances capped, the Bone Offering sometimes would basically die the moment that I would cast them. So the moment that they die, all of your bone shields go away, and there goes all of your damage. So as far as minion resistances go, there's some good nodes. So I run a couple jewels that have elemental resistance for minions. So this is 10% all, 10% all. So there's 20. We have this node over here, Crystalline Flesh, for another 20, plus increasing the max resistances. We have this cluster of nodes right here, which is 22, 8, and 8. So for a total of 38 and another 3% max. This one's nice for the chaos resist, but also because of the minion regeneration. The physical damage reduction here is nice. I also grab it up here, Left Hand of Darkness, for that chaos resistance as well as the physical damage reduction. And this guy right here is another 8%. So for me, that was enough to get them capped on resistances. Another option would be something like Carry-On Call. If you don't want to run a shield on your secondary or your offhand, you could run Carry-On Call and then save yourself those points on the tree and just focus on your own gear. So that's another option that I was running for a while. But as you can probably tell from the footage, the thing my build is lacking right now is survivability. I need to get that solved. But other than that, some other things to note about the Bone Offering is I am running Rupture the Soul. So this is another Lich Ascendancy. So this is, if more than anything, this has been augmenting the clear, and it might even be entirely unnecessary. So earlier I did not have this before I got my third Ascendancy, and the Bone Offering was still doing very well with clear. This helps augment the clear, but I might switch it over to Soulless form. We'll see. Just to run through what I'm running specifically, as far as the rest of my gems go, this is by no means an optimized build. This is just me messing around. I like to run a nice big variety of minions rather than super stacking on one. Obviously, I'm stacked on Reavers here, but I also have at least a little splash of others. We've got the Skeletal Warriors, that you get from the Rattling Scepter. That's just part of the Rattling Scepter. Is 2 free Skeletal Warriors, which is nice. I run Death March on them and Sacrificial Lamb because they're often targeted by the offering skills. These are typically the ones that are being sacrificed, mostly. Sacrificial Lamb's a little bit bugged right now. You'll notice that if I use Pain Offering, it's going to target it for sure. We have another one over here. The thing that you'll find with the support for Dance Macabre, where it targets 2. So if we can point out our warriors here. Where are they? We've got warrior here, and where's our other warrior? He's hiding behind the brute there. So if I cast him here, one of those was actually a Reaver. So this very frequently, and that time it was my Storm Mage. So this really only applies the Sacrificial Lamb to one of the 2 targeted. This also takes into consideration when you do something like Pain Offering or multiple offerings. You'll notice that frequently after the first Sacrificial Lamb minion was impaled, even if there are more left over, it doesn't really consider that support after that. I run Culling Strike on the Skeletal Warrior, just because they're not doing much damage themselves, but it's nice for them to pull. Just your standard blocking support gems, Wind Wave, Unbreakable, Crackling Barrier. There's probably better things for me to put in there. Skeletal Clerics, I run 3 of them because we're killing minions a lot with offerings, so the Clerics help keep us restocked on minions. Skeletal Brute, as mentioned before, is there to stun primed enemies. The Storm Mage, I was hoping to use Death Storm for Shocking Ground more frequently, but unfortunately the Clerics are too good at their job, and you don't really get much of a chance to cast Death Storm. But they are still kind of nice at inflicting shock. But mostly I have it here as an extra persist minion, so that here on Skeletal Reaver I run Muster, so the more persist minions I have, the more damage the Muster support gem gives. I also run Impale on the Reaver. I don't know if this is good or not. Maybe it is, maybe it's not, but since the Reavers are the ones attacking the most frequently, and you can't put Impale on Bone Offering, unfortunately, that would be pretty busted if you could. They're going to be inflicting Impale at the highest magnitude out of any of the other minions, and then the things like the Bone Constructs from Unearth, the Skeletal Warriors, and the Brutes can capitalize on those Impale stacks. And then, of course, Feeding Frenzy. Unearth is just for corpse conservation, so I can get more Bone Constructs out. Discombobulate, so they can be stunned more easily. Maim, just because we don't care about the damage that the Unearth constructs are doing. We're just looking for utility here. Pain Offering, I actually rarely use Pain Offering except maybe in boss fights, because the Bone Offering is usually enough to take care of any enemies. But we have Font of Rage, Font of Blood. I could probably put Font of Mana in there. I have an open skill slot. Then Blasphemy. I should probably change Blasphemy to Blink and then just manually cast the curse, but I'm too lazy to manually cast it. So there's optimization that can be done there. As far as gear goes, my gear is not great. The only unique I'm running is this guy here, the Wave Shaper. It's got a lot of really fun stuff on it. It gives you quite a lot of armor just from having max mana. So that's pretty neat. My Rattling Scepter is not great. It's just Spirit. That's about the only notable thing here. I'm sure some attack speed, crit hit chance, those are kind of nice, but that's really about it, is the Spirit. So as far as minion gem levels, I'm missing out on a ton right now. My helmet is a source of minion gem levels. There's 2 from there, and then 1 from my amulet. And then the rest of my gear is pretty mediocre, unremarkable. A lot of it's just resists, and that's about it. So yeah, thanks for checking it out. The rest of the map is going to be after this. You'll see me die to the boss and skip an expedition. But yeah, thanks for checking it out.